Hi everyone, and welcome to the Geek Show with me, Rob, and today we're talking about another video game. We've got Zanki Zero Last Beginning, which is a rather unusual game. It's developed by Lankas and published by Spike Chunsoft, and at first glance you'd say it's a very anime-centric game, because it is. But at second glance, when you actually play the game, you might think, this is a lot like Danganronpa. And you would be right, because a lot of the people who worked on the game also worked on Danganronpa. There are some very, very big differences between Danganronpa and Zanki Zero, though, and we'll get into those in a bit. Zanki Zero it's an unusual game in that it's kind of science fiction mixed with a little bit of theology, maybe a little bit of mysticism, but the whole concept of the game is that you play the role of a character at the end of the world, and there are only 8 people at the end of the world in this place called Garage Island. The official summary says God created the world in 7 days. It only took 1 day for humans to destroy the world. Life as we knew it sank to the depths of the sea until yesterday. So you've got that weird post-apocalyptic vibe going on with the ruined town, and you have to fight for survival and things like that. But there's so much in this game, it kind of becomes a little bit overwhelming at times, because there's just so much to do. So, in the main, as I said, it is a very anime-style game. The character designs are basically what you'd see in anime and manga, with a few little twists. An unusual thing about the characters in this game is that all of them have a little cross-shaped piece of metal on their belly button that they can't remove. Nobody seems to know what that's about, but you do find out what that's about later on. And this is where it starts deviating wildly from what you might have expected if you were a Danganronpa fan. Now, as I've said, in general the game plays a lot like Danganronpa in terms of the exploration part. You move around, you explore, you've got a cursor where you can inspect certain things and certain special items, you can look for clues, look for survival things, that sort of thing. There is also combat in this game as well, first person perspective dungeon crawler that it is, because that's exactly what it is, first person perspective dungeon crawler. You take on the role of Haruto Higurashi, who at the beginning of the game, this is not a spoiler, at the beginning of the game, you see him at the top of a building, and then you see an image just after where he's not at the top of the building. Figure out what's happened there. There are 7 other characters on Garage Island who you can interact with and even form relationships with if you're bunkmates. There are also 2 extra characters who are Mirai and Sho Terashima, and they only appear on the television, which isn't plugged in, so a little bit of a Persona 4 vibe going on there with the TV. They give you instructions and give you missions, and also, when you complete those missions, give you rewards, things like food. And your first mission after Haruto joins the group is to make a toilet. Again, not a spoiler, it's the first thing that you do. So, you've got Garage Island to explore, and as you progress through the game, more and more features will be unlocked. You will have to fight resident creatures on the island for food, but the creatures become more and more difficult as you level up, as you get stronger. There are also other aspects of the game which come into play, things like your stress levels, your hunger and thirst, that sort of thing. Now, this is where it takes a big departure from Danganronpa, in that Danganronpa was very much about death. Now, some of you may disagree, but that's a lot of the focus of Danganronpa, was the rather interesting and stylish ways that Monokuma would execute the villains. That played a big part. Whereas in this, it's kind of about life, I suppose, in that it is about cloning. And so what you have is a cast of characters who are basically clones, and each clone has a 13-day life cycle, which is why in the image, in the publicity image that you see, you'll see a couple of children, but when you look at the list of characters, you don't see those children in the list of characters. and there are only 8 actual characters on Garage Island. So when I first looked at that, I was a bit confused, and then when I played the game, suddenly it all made sense. So anyway, be that as it may, Garage Island, or Junk Island as it was originally called in the Japanese version, is an interesting place to explore. It is your typical post-apocalyptic setting in a kind of small Japanese town. So if you have watched or read any post-apocalyptic manga or anime, then it's the kind of setting that you'll be familiar with. There are other areas that you can go and explore, which are more like dungeons than the area that you have on Garage Island, which officially becomes your base after a little bit. And those areas will contain stronger monsters, more resources, that sort of thing. The thing about Zanki Zero is, much like other games of this type, it's very story-driven. It's very much driven by the power of its narrative. And if you don't buy into that from the beginning, then it becomes a little bit difficult to proceed with the game. It's like any game of this type where it's a first-person perspective. You go through, fight monsters, do certain things, do other things, but very much powered by you being part of the story and following the story in an almost linear fashion. There are some deviations, I suppose, but the story is quite linear. But that's the thing. I like this game. In fact, I like it a lot more than I liked Danganronpa. I wouldn't say I was the biggest Danganronpa fan. I liked the first Danganronpa game, I liked the second Danganronpa game, but then it just felt like it was trying a bit too hard. This one, I like straight away because I'm a sci-fi nerd, and it just appealed to me. I like the ideas that it's playing around with, and I think the characters were interesting takes on typical anime tropes. The voice acting is very good. The gameplay is very familiar to anyone who's played Danganronpa, but it's very easy to pick up as well. There's some pretty good instructions on what you need to do, as and when you need to do them. And they're very helpful. But in the main, it's the story that will bring you back to the game. Like I said, there are a lot of things to manage in the game. Your stress, your hunger, your thirst, your inventory, your characters, all sorts of things like that. But that all adds to the game, and the fact that it's a survival setting, a more believable survival setting, I suppose, than Danganronpa. Both of them are unbelievable, but one is slightly more believable than the other, being stranded on a deserted island with a group of other castaways. Effectively, that's what you are. Yes, okay, it's the end of the world, but that's basically the scenario. And that's a bit more believable than being trapped in a school and forced to play death games. So anyway, I like Zanki Zero. I think it's an interesting variation on the Danganronpa type game. I think it's a fun game to play. It's got an interesting story. But what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. I am always interested in finding out what people thought of it. If you're a fan of Danganronpa as well, I'm especially interested. Did you like Zanki Zero? Do you share my thoughts on it, or do you have very different thoughts on it? Do let me know in the comments below. And with that, that's all for today, folks. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos about video games from us, and we'll see you all on the next video.
Why don't you start by telling us your name, age, and profession?
My, it's like you're taking him in for question. Let's welcome him with words of love.
Flores, huh? Hope you taste better than you can see. I really don't think we should be eating him.
Haruo Higurashi, was it? Welcome to Garage Island. And my condolences. Yeah.
I'm your senior. Also,
My.
Yeah.
yes.
I'm sorry.
Look,
You were probably right.
Wait,
What?
answer me, please.
Now. Chit.
Well,
huh?
Yeah!
hey!
See?
Found it.